EAGLES, Eagles.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of Birds 365. It is cut down day, everybody. Another milestone we'll check off the books as we prepare for September 6th down in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Johnny Mac, good morning to you on this Tuesday. How you doing, man? How you doing, man?
Yeah, good morning. Obviously busy day. Not the best day for a lot of players around the NFL, but a bunch of them will be brought back. So always remind that to the practice squad. So we'll see how everything shakes out. A lot of names leaked yesterday. The only thing officially official from the Eagles, 4 vested veterans: Will Greer, the quarterback, cornerback Perry Nickerson, edge rusher Julian Okwara, and offensive lineman Max Sharping were all released. They don't have to go through waivers because they're vested, so they're immediately free agents. Obviously, when 1,100 guys hit the open market, it's not the best time to be a free agent. So we'll see if they're able to bring any of those back, because you're allowed to have veterans on the practice squad. Those are the official names. Bunch of unofficial ones. Zach McPherson, unfortunately, that Achilles injury last year, he said goodbye, so that's almost official from his perspective. And let's see what I got. You got to run down the list. At wide receiver, Austin Watkins, Griffin Hebert, that's already been made. Most of these are obvious. Tight end, Kevin Foolish, who got here late. Amari Rogers, who got here late. Obviously, they had already cut C.J. Uzomah as a veteran earlier. Offensive lineman, Gottlieb Aije, Jason Poe, Teron Jackson on the defensive front, P.J. Mustafer as well. Brandon Smith at all-ball linebacker, who had a pretty good camp. Unfortunately for him, Andre Sam, undrafted free agent safety. Sean Stevens, undrafted corner. Mekhi Gardner, also the Eagles waived, are releasing him off injured reserve after working out an injury settlement with him. So I think that's everything to this point. Still a lot of moves to be made. Those are the more obvious ones. And that's where we are.
Good stuff, John. We'll see what all comes out. Why do those 4 guys? I guess just because they're vested, right? So you can officially put it out before all the other guys. The Greer, Nickerson.
I mean, it's a lot of teams waive players. It's just up to the individual teams. A lot of teams, Tampa Bay is already down to their initial 53. I mean, they did it early, so it's just up to the various GMs and how they go about business. But the Eagles generally wait on most things for why they did the veterans at that point. In some cases, maybe they're trying to do them a slight solid by getting out there a little bit early, but yeah, it's just the way they do business.
Good stuff, John. I want to ask you about one guy too. I think it might mess you up there, Johnny Mac. I want to thank everybody for being here. By the way, this morning, Bobby Peoples sends $5 with no chat. Bobby, no chat, man. If you guys want to, he says you guys are awesome. Thanks for the $5 super chat, man. We appreciate it. I'm going to welcome and thank everybody for being here this morning. John, one guy I got to ask you about that I think might bite you in the butt.
Howie. I'm yelling at Howie already.
I know. Is that what it is, John? What's going on with Anais Smith and the MRI coming in?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, it's funny. Ian Rappaport yesterday all of a sudden reports Anais reported discomfort in his ankle and hamstring after completing Saturday's game. The 5th rounders getting an MRI, and his availability for the start of the season is in some doubt. So that's what Ian reported. Now, ironically, I was talking to Anais for a good solid 15 minutes after the game. He was not in any discomfort. He was not looking for any treatment. Certainly. As a matter of fact, I asked him about his stress fracture, and he said injuries are no excuse for his summer. And this pops up. So, you know, I can guarantee this. If ever there's a guarantee that an MRI is not coming back clean, this is it. It's pretty obvious they're going to put Anais Smith on injured reserve. And yeah, I mean, now part of this, full disclosure, I put Anais on my 53. So yeah, I'm angry at Howie. But I mean, come on, dude. It's like if anybody has the cachet to cut a fifth round draft pick in this league in the modern environment, it's Howie Roseman. Number one. That's number one. Number two, if you want to keep the guy and stash the guy, understand he needs development. He can't practice when he's on injured reserve. So this is just about saving face. He can't practice. So if you keep him on there for 4 weeks and maybe there's an injury and maybe you kick it down the road that way and maybe he's back on the roster by the 5th game. But then if everybody's healthy, obviously he's not going to be part of it. Then you extend it, and because you can keep saying, oh, he's struggling with this, struggling with that, and this entire time he's not practicing. So this is simply about saving face on a draft pick. And I mean,
It seems so simple to everybody that it's a wink, wink, nod, nod type of injury. How do you get away with that? Does the NFL just not really care?
Well, it is much more difficult than it used to be. I mean, George Allen, for those who've been around for way too long, like me, used to stash a bunch of players with the old Washington Redskins, and it was just a way of doing business, and you can't do that anymore. You need medical background. You need to prove an injury. You need to have something behind. But the thing is, even a 22-year-old kid, however old Anais is, if you put him through enough tests, there's something wrong. He might have tendonitis. He's an athlete. Not hard to come up with. He just had a stress fracture that he had surgery on. Not hard to find something if you're going to put somebody through an MRI. So they care, and it's more difficult. You need to substantiate the medical issues, but it's easy to do that. Everybody's got a tweak who's an athlete, and Anais is no different. But I mean, if you think he's got potential, you want him practicing and you want him developing. He can't practice on injury reserve, so that's my big issue. I'm like, this is about saving face on the draft pick. And you could put him on waivers and maybe he passes through waivers, get him on the practice squad, and he can practice. And if somebody claims him, you're Howie Roseman. You're not getting fired because Anais Smith didn't work out in Philadelphia. That's my only issue.
Well, and it also might cost you, but I bet you it's going to cost more than just you. It might cost a lot of people in the beat reporters who had Anais Smith on the roster. What's that mean though, Johnny Mack? If Anais goes to the IR, if we don't know, I guess we don't have that hasn't been confirmed yet. But does that mean Paris Campbell's in?
Well, potentially. You could keep an extra corner. You can go a lot of different ways. I mean, I think the assumption is that Paris is going to be in. From most people, is going to be in early in the season because Julian Okwara just got here. Sorry, Julian Okwara. Jahan Dotson, for some reason, I had Julian because he got cut as well. Jahan Dotson just got here. And, is he going to be ready to go? He's got to learn a new offense. He's a very young player. So is he going to be ready to help you against Green Bay or even early in the season? So I think the assumption for most people when they saw it is, Anais is going injured reserve. That's pretty obvious. And B, yeah, Paris will probably be here to play early in the season and then maybe down the road get released when Jahan Dotson is fully ready to go.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening there. Speaking of wide receivers, a little non-Eagles news right now, but I do feel the need to hit on it. It's a division rival, and a big move came down the pipe yesterday. Johnny Mac with CeeDee Lamb strikes a big deal. Finally, Jerry Jones pays his wide receiver number one, a deal that averages at around $34 million a year, $100 million guaranteed. Johnny Mac, what'd you think of that deal that came down in Dallas?
Yeah, no surprise. I mean, Jerry's an idiot, but he pays his players. I mean, that's the part I've been saying. You know, he pays. He kind of admitted it this year. He likes to keep the Dallas Cowboys in the forefront of the news. And you have all these people talking about the Dallas Cowboys constantly. Like they never lose players they want to keep. Now, the moron part of it is he's got to pay a tax,
right?
Because he's got to pay more. But he always keeps them.
It's almost like he doesn't even care. He's like, I'll take the write-off or whatever.
He doesn't care. And from CeeDee Lamb, everybody says, actually, because he plays in Texas and Justin Jefferson plays in Minnesota, he's the highest paid receiver.
Yeah.
Not on paper, but taxes. And, you know, Bill Belichick was talking about this yesterday in Massachusetts as well. So if you're in these progressive states, whatever you want to call it, liberal states, high tax states, you're up against it.
Yeah, the government's the real winner in all these contracts,
yeah.
Johnny. Every time somebody signs, they're like, woo, the cash register is going for us.
But Texas and Florida have a real advantage over your Californias, your Minnesotas, your Massachusetts, your Pennsylvanias, your high tax states. So CD got paid. He's going to get paid. Everybody's going to get paid. Micah Parsons is going to get paid, but he's not going to be proactive. What's that?
You think they paid Dak?
Yes. His history is he pays everybody. He wants to pay.
Yeah. I just didn't know. I don't know. Maybe he's got something up his sleeve. Maybe he wants Sanders or somebody in the draft next year. I don't know. It's one thing to pay a wide receiver. To the quarterback? I mean, you're going to go into the year with the quarterback on an expiring contract? I just don't get that.
I mean, that is a more difficult question. You want him, obviously, he's going to be the highest paid quarterback of all time when he does sign. Dak Prescott, if he does sign with the Cowboys.
It's $72 million a year at this rate for Jerry Jones.
And I guess there's a chance he could say, you know what, we're not going to win with this guy, and maybe does draft somebody or wants to go about it that way. And Deion Sanders, that lunatic, by the way, we should spend it.
What the
steers his kid to Dallas or whatever, but a bunch of things can happen. But the point is, if Jerry wants to keep a player, he's keeping the player. So everybody getting excited about him, he's keeping the player, and that's his history. Why he does it the way he does it, he kind of admitted it. Keep the Cowboys in the national conversation because everybody's talking about it. It's CeeDee Lamb. How could you not pay CeeDee Lamb? Well, he's going to pay CeeDee, and he paid CeeDee Lamb more than he had to.
Yeah, a big deal for CeeDee Lamb. Look, I'm obviously not a Cowboy fan, but I respect talent. CeeDee Lamb is good player. In my opinion. I do not see him as a Justin Jefferson type. I don't even see him as an AJ Brown type.
He's a great player.
Yeah,
he's a great player. He's in the top 5 conversation. And then you could debate Jefferson.
I lost you, John. I don't have you. One sec.
You got me? Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, if you can hear me. If anybody.
You there, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm talking.
I don't know if people in the chat can hear you or what. My computer's not putting out any sound.
Anybody hear me in the chat? Let's see. Anyway,
1 second, John.
If people can hear,
sorry guys, a little business on air right now.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do I got you, John?
Yeah, they can hear me.
I don't know what the heck's going on.
I
can't hear John. Let me take John. Let me hit the commercial break. We have Brooks Kubena coming up in about 3 minutes. I got to figure out how to get some audio coming out of this computer. I don't know. Hopefully my speakers didn't just blow out on both of them. I don't know what's going on. The mic, the headphones, none of it's working. So let me get to the break, Johnny Mac. Brooks Kubena from The Athletic coming up next here on Birds 365. So stay tuned, everybody. Sorry for the business on the fly here. I couldn't hear what Johnny Mac said, so can't respond to him. So we'll get to the commercial break. We'll be back in 3 minutes.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Up. And go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles. EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to Birds 365. Sorry for that technical difficulty there. Had to make the quick switch to the laptop. Joined now by Brooks Kubena from The Athletic. Brooks, what's going on, man? Welcome to the show.
What's up, Zander? How you guys?
Good to see you, Brooks. Cut down day, your first one in Philadelphia. What are you most interested in, focused on? What are the more difficult decisions as Howie Roseman tries to get down to 53?
Well, I think it's more on depth sides. I mean, this is a team whose top talent is pretty clear, especially offensively. You start thinking about, I think, more on maybe the edges of the cornerback section. What do you do with like depth at linebacker? How do you support the defense in a way that last year, once injuries occurred and depth issues started to emerge, that they're a little bit more supported this year? I think that's mostly where the conversation is this year, which I think is probably a good sign going into a season that they've addressed a lot of the personnel needs they need across the board. Like, I think the main questions for me about this team aren't so much who makes the team, but where do these people end up playing? Quinyon Mitchell, for example, Cooper DeJean, are these people ready? So, in that view, I mean, you start thinking about, okay, well, maybe if some of the players that they signed don't perform as well on the field, let's say like linebacker, how they completely overhauled that position. How is Devin White going to play once he gets on the field? Is that going to be sustained play? Who's going to be behind him if that doesn't work out? If Nakobe Dean, who's had injuries, who's going to be behind him? Did Oren Burks show enough? And I thought he had a really good game to close the preseason. So I think when you look at those spots depth-wise, they've pretty much figured out right guard with Mekhi Becton, but who's behind him? Tyler Steen hasn't been available. Brett Toth has played well and played right guard for the first time in the preseason. So just seeing those spots where those answers end up coming, because those are decisions that I think would be interesting.
No doubt about it. Brooks, I want to ask you about Ainias Smith. That came down late yesterday. One of the rookies, apparently an MRI's coming. What was your takeaway from that story? Is that some roster skullduggery there where they're kind of making something happen, a phantom injury, you could call it? What's your takeaway on that?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Ainias Smith with the MRI yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, he missed a time in the off season coming through, and it was a bit of a slow start in the preseason. So I think, just seeing him play throughout this, I mean, they drafted him. They liked him enough to bring him into the team. And, obviously at the start, performance can be affected by this. And, instead of parting with him, it brings up an opportunity for, the Eagles to give him a little bit more time. So, no, I don't think it's a phantom. I think it's a way that you're looking at in the 53-man roster to kind of keep players that you like and to see more evaluation with them for a longer deal. Because I think if Ainias Smith were to be cut, I think that's a player that you're not going to be able to stash on your practice squad. I think that's a high enough draft pick, a high enough resource that another team's going to swoop in. So you start looking at what can you do. So, the rule this year on today, NFL teams can put a player on IR, 2 players for IR, with the designation to return within 4 weeks, after 4 weeks. So they have to miss 4 games. Is Ainias Smith going to be involved in the first 4 games, especially after the Jahan Dotson trade? It doesn't look like that. So keeps a player in the building, gives him a longer ramp. And wide receiver depth is important. And this team's been searching for a wide receiver 3 for a while. Jahan Dotson looks good on paper. Had some good stats with no quarterbacks in Washington, but still haven't seen him on the field yet. He was still looking at the playbook on Saturday when we were last talking to him. So I don't think that's a player that they really want to give up on yet in Ainias Smith.
Yeah, my only issue with putting Ainias on IR, Brooks, is that you can't practice when you're on IR. So if anybody needs reps and practice time and thing on the field, it's Ainias Smith. So I get why Howie's doing it, and he doesn't want to lose the player. And he was a high-profile player in college. He was a playmaker, probably would have been drafted higher if he didn't have the stress fracture. So I do agree with you. Somebody might take a shot on him, and that's what's going on. But he can't practice when he's on IR. So that's the only tweak I would say is a little bit questionable. But from the standpoint of immediacy, you mentioned Jahan Dotson. He just got here. He's still learning the playbook. Is it an indication to you that Paris Campbell's going to be here short term, at least? Maybe to get ready to play that role against Green Bay, maybe the first couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think Paris Campbell could make the roster. I think he's obviously got his background with Nick Sirianni. That helps when you have a connection with the head coach. I think you've seen him. He dealt with a groin injury early in training camp, but started to come on a little bit towards the past end. I thought he practiced well at times on Saturday. He had one of the longest receptions. They were really trying to get him the ball there. Found himself in open space, and they were searching for speed. And I think we saw a little bit that from him and what he can do for the offense. I think he adds to the group. I think what's so interesting about this new offense that we didn't really get a full view of in the preseason it's really wide receiver based in the way that they are really going to attack and try and figure out and force their hand, force their motive. Kellen Moore moves his wide receivers around, outside, inside, trying to dictate the matchups that he has. And I think when Paris Campbell is someone that you can demand attention on one end to try and get AJ Brown or Devontae Smith clear on some other end. And I think he fits for now. I think having got Jahan Dotson in, he's got a week and a half to prepare. Is that enough for him to be ready by Brazil? I think in a reduced role, yeah. I think that's kind of how I think of this as they produced for the week one. Is like you can sometimes see someone get traded in the middle of the season or signed in the middle of the season, and whether it's a linebacker or a defensive player, sometimes it's like, all right, this person can play in this specific defensive package. I think they do the same thing with Jahan Dotson. Is like, okay, well, he's a good player. He's not going to get to know all the playbook within 2 weeks. What piece of this can we use him for? And in the meantime, using guys that have been there the whole summer, like Paris Campbell. And I think that probably would be an approach that the Eagles could take.
Brooks, if I'm not mistaken, you arrived on the Philadelphia beat halfway through last season or after the first couple of games. Is that right?
The Cowboys game at home right before the bye week.
So this was your first Philadelphia Eagles training camp that you covered. What were your takeaways from the training camp? Did anything stick out to you that was unusual? What were your first takeaways from covering the Eagles training camp?
Well, it wasn't so damn hot. I know that.
Well, yeah, you were coming from Texas, right? You covered the Texans before.
Yeah, that's right. So the number one, I don't think we had so much as one hot day the whole time in training camp. That was pretty nice.
We had the one hot day. We had the one really, but you're from Texas, so Texas, Louisiana.
This is the tale of two reporters. Yeah. I had John coming on every day. Oh, it was a hot day.
Yeah, well, it was very humid summer, and the one day, Brooks,
y'all can't talk to me about humid. So
yeah, well, yeah. Again, we're talking to a Texas. We're talking to somebody, so that's completely different.
Yeah, I lived in Texas for 2 years, so I know the pain.
Where?
Right outside of Houston.
Okay. All right. Well. Yeah. Things that mattered that I noticed, this is a deep team. I think when you looked at to just take away from watching how they practice, Jalen Hurts obviously was a big point of conversation throughout the training camp. Just he looked impressive throwing the ball, especially deep. You wanted to see more, I think, from Saquon Barkley. They're obviously protecting him a lot through training camp. He didn't play at all in the preseason. Don't really want to tip their hand as how much is going to be involved in the offense. It's just it was practice with and then a team that's got a lot of talent. And I think the things that I've written throughout the training camp, things that it's a team that's still somewhat in transition that makes it interesting to me because you're seeing players like Jason Kelce come back onto the field for visits. You see, visitors for a lot. There are a lot of people that were popping in over training camp, but there are players like Cam Jurgens who are like on the first day of practice, they go out there and they run after practice, kind of trying to assert, okay, this is I'm not new. I've been around for 3 years, right? In Cam Jurgens' way, and they're transitioning under him. So all these sections of players have had a lot of storylines. There's a lot of talent, and there's a lot of questions. And this is a team that unquestionably should, at the very least, make the playoffs, if not contend for a long run. So just watching that throughout training camp and seeing where the holes are, what things are happening, and there weren't that many position battles. It was just interesting to see how linebacker played out, cornerback played out, and that's right guard played out, and that's about it. So, not a lot of 5-alarm fires in this training camp.
I think we all agree this team is very gifted with the starters. Certainly offensively, we talked about, I mean, there's Pro Bowl level players all over the place, littered all over the place. Defensively, I think it's pretty evident the talent level has been upgraded. We'll have to see how quickly, as you mentioned, guys like Quignon, Cooper DeJean can get ready, Brooks. But I do want to talk to you about that depth because, I want to get your take on this because I've been thinking about this in recent days. Obviously, the strength of this team is offense. I think they're deeper on defense. The backups are better than the Eagles' offensive backups, not the starters. That's number one. And number two, any concern, the final preseason game, they got waxed against a team that isn't great. It was backups against backups, though. The Vikings didn't play anybody either. So I think we all agree if the starters played, the Eagles would be in good shape against the Vikings. But the backups weren't. They got waxed pretty handily. Any concern about the depth, particularly offensively, with this team?
I don't really take too much stock into preseason blowouts or preseason losses or wins. So, like, I think I'm a little less concerned about that, especially because the starters are so much better, and you're not going to be in a situation where all of them are out. So, I mean, it's just I feel less concerned about that last game. But yeah, I think it's interesting. If the backups on the offensive line, I think, are probably where you're most concerned. Where are things in the interior? Because this has been one of the best offensive lines in the NFL over the last 4 years, at least, sustainable for a long time. You've seen Mekhi Becton for one play. Is he a right guard? Is he NFL caliber? Is he going to go in there and on the first game against the Packers, so okay, they can run behind him, they can protect behind him. That's something that we still haven't really seen consistently. Cam Jurgens, you've seen that right guard at least, and there's been confidence in him at center. If those things don't work out, what depth are you looking at? You got Tyler Steen, who had one game last year really, and wasn't quite
great
for a rookie who's still working into a new role in the team, and he didn't have much practice time because of his ankle over training camp. So that's a concern. Is your answer then Brett Toth, who has been practice squad on off for a while with a couple of different teams, and the players that they brought in like Matt Hennessy also have been dealing with some injuries over training camp. So that to me is the biggest thing. It may never see the light of day if Becton ends up being okay and healthy and available, but that's where your Achilles heel is in this offense.
Nick Gates. That's my guy right there, bro.
Gates. I mean, they've done a lot to try and patchwork that position and the depth together. So that's the backup spot. That's the depth spot on the offense that most concerns me. I don't think the Eagles are going to be in a situation where their wide receiver core is, calamitous. I mean, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, that's why they extended them both through 2028, one through 2029. Jalen Hurts has been available. So, like, if anybody's starting quarterback, if you start having to worry beyond that, I think a team's going to be in trouble. So,
yeah. But Doug Peterson, I'll throw out when Doug was here, he used to say it's not injuries, it's multiple injuries at one position. Yeah. And he went through that back when he was here with the offensive line. And we've seen the Eagles with Lane Johnson over the years, without Lane Johnson over the years. It is dramatic. It's almost unbelievable for an offensive lineman could make that much of a difference. And last year we saw it on the defensive side at slot corner. They had multiple injuries at one position, and it became a disaster. I think that's the concern. And when you look at the offensive side, Linebacker's the perfect example to me, Brooks, on defense. I don't know if they have starters, but I like them all as backups. I think the depth is solid. I'm like, they can all. I mean,
Oh,
if you
he's
throw,
smart. Yeah.
yeah, if you throw Ben Van Sumeren out there, I think you're going to be fine as at least a persevering type level, all the way down to Ben. And you mentioned Oren Burks and who if it ends up being Devin White and Zach Bond, then you have Nakobe Dean and Jeremiah Trotter. I like them all. You can persevere with them all. I don't know if that's the case at a bunch of positions on the offensive line. You bring up the interior, but certainly even in practice, when they give Lane a Veterans Day, or he was dealing with the toe earlier in the summer, and Fred Johnson's out there, bang, Nolan Smith shows up. It's almost glaring. So I guess I'm a little bit more concerned at multiple spots if you have multiple injuries, which granted, that's rich guy problems. I mean, the Eagles have so much talent. It's definitely a rich guy's problem, but we got 2 hours to talk about this team every day. So we talk about this stuff.
This would have been a different conversation had the Eagles gone a different direction in the first round. The first round had one of the deepest offensive tackle classes, line classes that I've ever seen. And they had a huge disparity on the Eagles in cornerbacks, and they needed them. And I remember to start training camp, and Howie Roseman said this even before that, but he was taking ownership for the lack of depth at corner, and he didn't do enough to supply that position. And the injuries last year, the multiple injuries that you're talking about, John, happened there, and they didn't have the depth. And that led partly to why they gave up the second most passing yards in the NFL. So is drafting a cornerback in the first round and trading up to draft another in the second overcompensating when you maybe had opportunities to have offensive lineman depth that you are now trying to patchwork together now? I think whenever they have players like Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, that they felt like their availability over the years, and Johnson's been available, that's a risk that you're going to take whenever you realize how bad the secondary was last year. So, there's a give and take. Having depth at offensive line would have maybe not had Cooper DeJean in camp. Maybe it would have had Quinyon Mitchell in camp. And I think for the Eagles, those positions were a lot more of a red flag than I think figuring out the depth of the offensive line, at least at this point. So, that decision doesn't happen in a vacuum. And I think this defense a lot more stronger with the secondary, a lot more secure, because I think Lane Johnson is, you look at the depth at cornerback. Darius Slay is entering his mid-30s. James Bradbury regressed, and that's why they were picking at cornerback, and that's why Bradbury's now playing at safety. Those things are a lot more immediate for the immediate term. And
I agree, and you're at the mercy of if Troy Botano went 20th, I believe, to Pittsburgh. I think if he's at 22, the Eagles take him. So a lot of it is
we had capital to trade up.
Yeah, but sometimes, I mean, that's a different conversation as well. Sometimes you don't want to make that move up and you're comfortable with a group of people. But if, and Howie will admit this at some point in the future, hopefully, generally they have a cluster of players. And if they're comfortable with getting any of them, they're not going to move up. If they're going to seize, and I think they were comfortable with Quinyon Mitchell, they were probably comfortable with Terrion Arnold. Who went a couple spots later, I believe, to Detroit. They probably would have been comfortable with any of those players. And I think everybody's happy with Quinyon. I think he had a great training camp. He looks like he's got potentially a lot of potential to be a top corner early in his career. But I think if push comes to shove and Fautanu's there, they probably take him. No guarantees, but and with that thought process of starting him out at right guard and then eventually kicking him out to right tackle if Lane Johnson ever does retire, just from knowing Howie over the years, and he will admit, and he'll probably admit today, You
I
know,
think it
when
would
we
be.
talk to him.
I think it would have been an interesting conversation had Isaiah Rodgers had at least an offseason of practice leading into that. How much depth did they know they had with that player? Because he's taken a lot of first team snaps throughout the defensive side in training camp. So, that's another player thrown in. Is Cooper DeJean an overkill pick? I don't know. I think that's talent that the secondary needed, and they're going to need that as players start going later into their career. They're a team that historically likes to give players opportunities to learn from veterans. Darius Slay is there. He's going to have at least another year, if not two, or however many more. Give them that opportunity that defensive linemen have had, offensive linemen have had. It makes sense to what the Eagles do as an organization.
Yeah. Well, number one, though, that's where I was going. And Howie will admit, and he's publicly admitted, he builds offensive line, defensive front first, always. So if it's a default setting, a lot of people were angry when he took Cam Jurgens at number 51 overall, and he said, that's how we roll. That's, if it's even, they're going to lean towards the offensive and defensive lines. And that's served them well. That's served Howie well over the years. But yeah, there's an overcorrection part of it. I do think it's going to work out. Cooper DeJean. But my one question to you, Brooks, about the secondary and about Quinion early is, and Vic Fangio's told us he likes to throw a lot at players early and then kind of scale it back. So it's a little counterintuitive from that standpoint. Most guys try to build. He tries to throw everything at him and then scale it back. This guy looks like he's going to be a great outside corner. And Vic admits that's where he's going to end up. So why are we messing with it? Why are we moving him around as a rookie? We're gonna start him outside if there's only two corners on the field, then move him inside. You like that? I kind of look at Vic and say, just put him outside. Let him be.
Well, the thing to that is that who else is playing in the slot? Who's playing nickel? At the start of camp, it was Avonte Maddox. I think it's interesting that Isaiah Rodgers never did it. That was a player that I thought maybe he might play some inside, but most of his career he's been on the outside. It is interesting. He brings in a couple of new players and throws a bunch at them and sees where they fit. I think it's an interesting strategy for definitely a long-time and proven defensive coach. And I think one of the things that was interesting about Quinion Mitchell playing inside was that Vic even said, we didn't know or think he could do it, but then all of a sudden, hey, look, he can. And I think that's why he has that strategy, because you enter a scenario where you're like, wow, I don't like my options at slot. Better now to know that Quinion can do it than wonder now whether he can and trying to slide him over there. The secondary is one of the most dexterous, I guess, in terms of where they can play. I think every time I write about a new defensive back pick, it's always using the word versatile, a word I'm starting to hate using. But yeah, I think that's an interesting approach in terms of at least having options once you get into a season. Is it a lot for a player to handle? I think he was mindful of that, because every time we talk to Fangio, who is, a breath of fresh air in terms of how he talks about his decisions and the players and stuff. And he says it was a concern whether they were going to put too much on Quinion's plate. And I think as soon as he'd realized he'd scale back. So those kind of things showed us not just what Fangio's approach is, but also what Quinion's like as a player. It shows that they really want him on the field. If he's going to play both outside corner and slot back-to-back plays, they really want him on the field. They wouldn't do that unless they felt like he belonged there 100% of the snaps, which means he's a good player in their position. Also, he can handle it, and also shows that if there was somebody else that could supplant him and they felt good at slot, there's a gap between Quinion Mitchell playing between both positions and somebody just alleviating that for him as he plays on the outside, so that they can have the best possible five. That was, of course, before Cooper DeJean returned to practice, which we've now seen. DeJean's playing a lot in nickel. That's probably where he ends up to start. And even Fangio said he wants to see Cooper DeJean on the outside. He wants to see him eventually at cornerback because he said that's where they drafted him. So
Yep.
I think it's from his approach somewhere where you don't corner yourself into having to make decisions where you can kind of see where players are. It's a long career for them. You manage how much their workload is, make sure they're not too confused. But they're also pros. You drafted them, and they can handle their business. So I think it's for especially for the needs that they needed across the secondary. I think they needed to do that. And I wrote about Quinyon Mitchell a lot in training camp, Cooper DeJean a lot. And as soon as I started questioning about the nickel, him playing nickel, readers were questioning while I was questioning that.
Why? How dare you?
75%, 80% of snaps, he's proven that he deserves to be on there for the rest of the 20%. Like that you need, especially.
Oh, I don't. Yeah,
So,
I'm not taking them off the field, but I'm just not moving them. Because there's always two cornerbacks on the field. So to me, it comes down to persevering with Avonte Maddox and until Cooper DeJean is ready versus Isaiah Rodgers or Kaylee Ringo outside. And Vic has made his decision. And it's more about optimizing Quinyon Mitchell for me. And that's where Vic has admitted, look, in the best case scenario, it's an outside corner. He's admitted that on multiple occasions. So if that's the best case scenario, make it happen, dude, and persevere at the other. That's kind of, and look, Vic Fangio's Vic Fangio. I'm somebody who talks about the Eagles. He's got the cachet. He's got the cachet for a reason. But I will say this, Brooks. Sean Desai is a Vic Fangio direct disciple. Sean Desai does everything the same way Vic Fangio does without the cachet. And when he started moving people around, and you weren't here last training camp, but I can tell you, we were all like, dude, what the hell are you doing? The James Bradbury to the slot, all this kind of stuff. He's throwing stuff at the wall because that's what Vic would do. That's what his mentor would do. But he doesn't have the reputation. And everybody was very comfortable ripping to Sean Desai, you know what. With Vic, it's like, it's Vic. He knows what he's doing. I think it's fair to question even the greatest defensive minds. And I think Vic, and I'll say it here, and I've said it, and I love Vic Fangio, and I think Vic knows that. I think he's wrong. Quinyon Mitchell, outside corner. He's going to be an outside corner. Put him outside. Don't mess with it. I want to optimize this kid as much as possible. And that to me is outside.
So who's your slot right now?
Avonte Maddox. Proven he can do it. The whole thing with Avonte Maddox, and I get this is not going to happen. This is just a conversation between us, Brooks, because they moved him to backup safety. He hasn't even been taking slot reps. But Avonte Maddox is a proven nickel corner in this league. The only question was, can he stay healthy? Maybe he can't long term. But he's healthy right now. He's healthy for Green Bay. And he's proven. In fact, he's a more proven slot corner than Isaiah Rodgers is an outside corner.
Yeah, I think to this point is, we get to see all the practice, which I love. I wish that continued throughout the rest of the year. We're about to just see a lot of stretching and walking, and, all we'll have are questions beyond that. But, if Avonte Maddox, you were just talking about your concerns about the depth on the offensive line, what if he goes down? He was out for most of the year last year. If he goes down, you haven't tried Mitchell out there. You're just going to try him out at nickel in the middle of the season and, something he's never tried before. My point is that, you see practice and you see players alternating between positions. I think a lot of coaches do that. I don't think it's just Fangio. I don't think it's just Desai. I think, they're trying not to be in a scenario where all of a sudden, oh crap, you have to try something out that you've never even tried before. So it doesn't bother me as much. I think how Quinyon Mitchell has shown himself on the field, I think it's been working out. I think there are some crossovers between those positions that help open his mind to let him know what's happening on the rest of the defense. But I think the larger conversation in terms of the future at cornerback is because these are positions that normally play 100% of the snaps during the season. So there's a likely scenario that if Quinyon Mitchell does end up starting opposite Darius Slay, that you got some good, pretty solid options in Isaiah Rodgers and Keely Ringo that may not see a snap for a long time, unless it's on, they bring him in a dime package or, substituting for a nick in the middle of a play. What happens with, obviously they've had injuries for a while, but do those become players if you're comfortable with depth, like Eli Ricks, for example, or someone else or whatever? Does the surplus of one part of your team supply the lack of another? Basically, are you exploring trades for some of these players? What can you get in return? I don't think we see that early on in the year. I think towards the trade deadline, if injuries don't persist at corner, you start looking at like what can there be? There'll be injuries across the rest of the league. Keely Ringo has played well throughout training camp in terms of being sticky with his man. I think he's one of the most unlucky corners I've ever seen in terms of the ball just fitting in right at that.
You got to catch it when it does come your way. Yeah,
it happens persistent enough that it's like, okay.
Well, I think he's a little too handsy too. A lot of flags when killed.
They like him. He's there to make the position on the play. He's like one step away from being, a truly noticeable cornerback. But is that a promise that another team would be really interested in and might pay for?
Well, I'm not trading Keely Ringo.
I'm just bringing up examples of like, if you got guys that are 100% on the field, what is it long term? Is that something that you look at? So I think that's interesting, at least to talk about.
I think Eli Ricks is a guy that he's an NFL corner. He's not going to play here. Let's be honest. A bunch of things would have to go wrong for him to get out there. And if you can get something for him, and because you have that discussion, like I always feel bad. I'm the only one, and make sure you follow Brooks on the X platform at B Kubena. Subscribe to The Athletic. They're having a sale right now, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brooks, but their NFL coverage is tremendous at The Athletic NFL. So make sure you do that. But I'm kind of torn with the idea that special teams coordinators like Michael Clay, it's like, all right, make do. And nobody thinks about that third phase as far as Josh Jobs, probably not a very good corner, unfortunately, but he's a great special teams player. Ben Van Sumeren has been tremendous, and you have that debate whether it's going to be Oren Burks, who's been a good special teams player himself. But I don't think a lot of teams, and you've been around different teams, I don't think a lot of teams keep guys anymore because they're good special teams players. You like that philosophy, or do you agree with it first? And do you like it if you do agree with it?
I haven't given it enough thought to give you one or the other, because special teams, from what I've seen from how players go into it, has been a very developmental sector. And sometimes you have players who become career special teams players in a specific role. I think what's interesting about the new rule change is that it makes it a lot more prevalent in terms of field positioning. You're going to need guys to destroy blocks, to get downfield, to be consistent at, kick coverage. Is that something that's going to be that's going to be important enough that you're going to start seeing more prominent players playing special teams? Do you want certain guys in there that maybe you'd have sat if they were whatever? Because I think what's interesting, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. brought this up, was that one of the major differences about the new kickoff rule is that you're not running 80 yards downfield anymore, 60 yards downfield anymore. So it makes it easier on players to go directly into defense. So do starters start playing kick coverage more? Is that something that they're worried about in terms of injuries? I mean, I believe it was Jacob Harris, one of the depth.
First play. Great play, too.
Great tackle.
Yeah, great tackle.
Now he's out. So do you want that to be Devin White or whoever? That's a risk that people have to weigh. I'm so interested by what's going to happen, and I think it's worked for me. What the NFL tried to do was make people interested in kickoffs. Now it's not going to be a position where a lot of everybody in the press box in the bathroom as they're coming back for a while. So it's disappointing whenever you see touchbacks with this, and we saw that a lot in the preseason. I'm just really excited to see what kind of wrinkles there are, what Michael Clay has come up in the bag in terms of kick return, because there are a couple of good kick return options in Britton Covey and Cooper DeJean once he's fully healthy. What are they going to end up doing? So I think I think the relevance has gone up, and I think if I'm Michael Clay or any other special teams coordinator, this just made my job. I mean, it's already secure. You're in the NFL. It's an important thing, but it also made it a lot more interesting and a lot more prevalent. There's job security, and there's also specialty that comes from that if you end up being good at it and have information that's valuable to your team. So I think this really did change special teams in a very interesting way.
Brooks, today's cut down day. Do you have one bold prediction on a guy that will either make the roster or get cut that people aren't anticipating?
I think James Bradbury makes the team.
I like it.
Nice. Yeah, I got him making the team. I can't imagine Howie taking it this far, waking up this morning and saying, all right, I'm giving up. I'm cutting him.
I mean, the safety spot right now, the depth is almost not there. You've got Avonte Maddox playing safety, and he's been playing nickel for most of his career. CJ Gardner-Johnson already missed part of training camp with the shoulder injury, and that might be something that, him and Reed Blankenship, if they're available, that may never be something that sees the light of day. But right now, they need James Bradbury. And, I just don't – his contract is fully guaranteed in terms of this year. That's something that I think gives him leverage, and it's partly why he was comfortable enough to try and make a move to another position from cornerback to safety. And I just think it doesn't make too much sense for me for them to get rid of him today.
Good stuff, Brooks Kubena. Make sure you guys follow Brooks. You can hear how smart and how good he is at covering this football team. Follow him on X at B Kubena. That's what it is, right, Brooks? Brooks B Kubena.
Kubena, that's right. BK.
Yep. And then read all his work at The Athletic. He does a great job over there. Brooks, thanks for joining the show, man. We appreciate it. We'll be reading and following your work all season long. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Appreciate it, Zander. Thanks, John. See you guys.
Thanks, Brooks. See you later.
Brooks Kubena joining us on Birds 365. Great stuff there, Johnny Mac, from Brooks Kubena. A lot of good chat reaction to Brooks in the chat. I thought you guys brought up some great topics. So we'll get to our next commercial break. We'll come back. Still an hour left to play. No guest in hour number 2. So Johnny Mac and I will kick around cut down day, some of the topics we just talked about with Brooks, and then we'll take some chat. I did have some super chats, John, that I missed in that open when my computer went haywire. So we'll get to some of them. We got a big one here from James Carver. So I'll hit that after the break. Stay tuned, everybody. Hit that like button. Big crowd in here right now. We appreciate all of you guys for being here. So stay tuned. Birds 365 will be back in 3.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in. The Tuesday edition. Just talked to Brooks Kubena. It's officially cut down day. So there'll be a lot of news breaking. Make sure you guys stay tuned on the channel. We'll be covering it all day long with what Howie ends up doing. John, what is the deadline today? It's 4 p.m., right?
4 o'clock Eastern. A couple of things already broke. Jack Stoll out with the Giants as speculated. So perhaps, no guarantee, but perhaps the Eagles might be interested to bring him back, lacking depth at tight ends. We'll see. Lou Nichols also out for the Eagles, no surprise. So little one, our buddy Andrew DeCecco has been doing good work, checking down agents. He's doing God's work because that's a pain in the ass. So Lou Nichols, which obviously is no surprise. Likely Kendall Milton, Ty Davis Price are likely going to be waived, and they might hand, one or two of them back to the practice squad, but we'll see how that shakes out.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. We're going to get into it. John, I want to hit on some of these super chats. I missed a few of them at the open. So we have no guest here in hour 2, so we will have a period of time here where we can discuss. If you guys do have chats for John McMullen or questions for John, I will take any and all super chats right now for the next 20 or so minutes here on the show. So thanks for our contributors right now. Let's go through them. Prince, sorry I missed you, man. You dropped this early in the show. And I missed it. Sorry about that, Prince, but we appreciate you being here. He says, Big Dom, hey, are you injured, Smith? I'm injured, Dom. Yes, I'll see you in 4 weeks. I think he's just poking.
Well, it is funny because I happen to be talking to Anias after the Vikings game for a pretty extended period. And as I said, he wasn't in any hurry to get any kind of treatment, number one. And I actually asked him about his stress fracture and about that affecting him early in the spring and summer. And he said, no excuses. And then all of a sudden, not that Anias is making an excuse, believe me, but I mean, this is just the Eagles trying to stash a young player they don't want to lose on waivers. But again, there's a give and take. And I mentioned again, when he is on injured reserve, he can't practice. And in theory, you would want a young player who needs practice time to practice. Not that can't overcome that, but you just throw that into the equation as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Next 3 super chats coming from our man James Carver. James, thank you, brother. Sorry I missed this one early. And then your 2 are more recent, so we're not as late on them. But you dropped this around 8:15, so sorry about that we missed it. James says, given all the money that Jerry made over the coverage of CD Dak, it's not as bad of a tax on the money-making end. And over the last 4 years, Dak is the highest paid QB player ever. It's a good point. I mean, John kind of talked about that at the Open, how Jerry milks the system a little bit and pays the tax and is all right with it.
If he's fine with it, I don't know why everyone else has got a problem with it. But from a usual standpoint, I mean, he's the owner of the team and he's the GM of the team. He does whatever he wants. So typically, there's no other setup like that.
I think he called himself the best GM in the world the other day, or something like that. I don't know exactly what the quote was. I'm paraphrasing.
Well, he doesn't have to answer to anybody, so he does what he wants, and what he wants is he wants to keep the Cowboys in the forefront. So he's a businessman. He's in the Hall of Fame, deservedly so. He's in the Hall of Fame as a businessman. He's not in the Hall of Fame as an executive, an NFL executive. And he's a great businessman, and he's made a boatload of money from an evaluation standpoint. By the way, the NFL's meeting today in Minneapolis, where they will vote on a new policy, potential new policy, allowing private equity firms to acquire up to 10% of a team. For those who noticed, back in June, there was talk of Jeffrey Lurie selling a stake in the Eagles. That's what it's about. If he can sell 10% of the team, and the bank they're working with is working off a $7.5 billion valuation, that would net Jeffrey Lurie $750 million on his original investment of under $200 million, just for 10% of the Philadelphia Eagles. So if that passes, and that's what I mean. Jerry's very good at being a businessman for the league as a whole and for the Dallas Cowboys. And he admitted what he wanted to see. He likes to keep the Cowboys in the forefront. How do you do that? Everybody's always talking about him. Why aren't they signing CD Lamb? Anybody who thought, and I've said it numerous times on the show, when people say, CD Lamb, Micah Parsons, Dak Prescott, they have these players, number one, and they're going to play, and they're very good, whether you like to admit it or not. And two, if they want to keep them, they're keeping them. And they want to keep, obviously, CD Lamb. They want to keep Micah Parsons. Dak's a little bit more in the up and up categories, and a very small chance they might do some different things. But, they're not going to have a problem paying them if they want to pay them.
No doubt about it. Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. Let's get to our next super chat. Somebody saying John, do I sound all right? My mic, I'm having some issues this morning with
a little bit off, but it's not terrible.
It should be a little bit better now, right?
There we go. It's better now.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Thanks for letting me know, South Jersey. Appreciate that. Having some technical issues this morning, Johnny Mac. I normally don't.
It happens.
It does. It does happen. We're a technical world that we live in. Let's go to our next super chat here from James Carver. Drops $20. James, thank you, man, for the support this morning. We appreciate it. J-Mac, we discussed that end of season, but now could you see any possibility Eagles extend Bradbury to lessen the cap hit before trying to trade, or else there's no way they can cut trade because his hits equal to 2x Barkley's picks?
Well, I mean, any kind of extension would have to be worked out on the back end with the new team. So I would say no, because from that standpoint, you have to understand what they want more to get them to trade. So I doubt it. I heavily doubt it. Certainly, and from the Eagles standpoint, I mean, that's the problem with this contract. I don't have it in front of me, but there's a boatload of voidable years on it already. And to restructure it to make him easier to trade. I would say that's very unlikely from two standpoints. One, anybody who's trading for James Bradbury right now would want him for the immediacy of it, not down the line. An upgrade. In other words, he would be an upgrade for him right now at his age and declining perception, I would say it. I don't think anybody's thinking long term about James Bradbury. I think anybody who wants him is thinking about 2024 and probably not much else.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Let's go to our last super chat. Thanks, James, for the super chats this morning. Thanks to all of our people for liking, for super chats. We appreciate all the support there. James says, on the money front, I personally like linebacker room and think it'll be fine, but could you see Howie having any interest in Ernest Jones' move? I also think any moves will require Sweat being extended, which I'd love in any case.
No, I don't. Yeah, it's interesting about linebacker because I'm much less concerned about the linebacker room than I was coming into camp. But again, I don't know if they have starters. I know they have backups. So to get a player like that who's a legit starter would help. But the Eagles do what they do at linebacker. They don't value the position no matter what. Howie will say publicly, actions speak louder than words, and it's been pretty good in the camp. So I don't think there's nearly the sense of urgency there was maybe at the beginning of camp. I think they're fine with their linebackers. I don't know if I agree with that, as I said. And whatever duo you want to come up with, all the way down to Oren Burks and Ben Van Sumeren, I don't think it would be that different from the other duo that you want to come up with. Perhaps the upside remains Nakobe Dean, though. I think Nakobe is the one guy who could seize the position and play at a higher than acceptable level, I would say.
Yeah, so we'll see what they end up doing there. James, I'll answer. I don't think I see Howie doing that, by the way. I don't anticipate him trading something for a big name linebacker. No. But yeah, I guess it's worth the conversation if you want him to do that, but I don't think he will. John, based on what's come out, I mean, you just talked about Andrew DeCecco reporting some of the guys that are cut. We talked about Ainias Smith. We talked about the 4 guys who have officially been waived. Is your thinking changing at all on this roster? Is there anything in your head that's changed where you're like, oh, maybe they're going to go this route or maybe they're going to do this?
Well, obviously, Ainias Smith, I think that's more likely they keep Paris Campbell early. I don't think long term, but it's a lot to expect Jahan Dotson to be ready to go by September 6th. With a full, as Brooks kind of said, with a full sort of plate of the playbook. Maybe he can do a few things. Maybe you can get him ready as a situational player. So maybe that helps Paris Campbell, who I thought, and I still think long term is really the guy most hurt by the Dotson trade, but maybe he's still here in the short term. So of all the other moves, reported or unreported to date, were expected. No, you have to go back to a little bit, and CJ Uzama, which was before. I think we all looked at him as a potential backup tight end with this team, and he just had a bad summer, just nothing left. So, but no surprises other than. And it's not even a surprise they're trying to stash Ainias Smith. It's just, it's to save face. And, if you believe in a player, keep him on the roster. If you don't, waive him. They're taking the, and Howie doesn't need to do that. A lot of GMs would need to do that. Howie doesn't need to do that. So why bother?
John, a lot of people upset about the James Bradbury thing. We just asked about it. Brooks Kubena was in here. He that was his bold pick that he's going to make the team. You believe he's going to make the team. A lot of our chatters aren't happy with it. Crowley, what's up, Crowley? He checks in. He says, what has Bradbury shown to deserve a roster spot? Hell, Tristan McCullum outplayed him. I think McCullum should make the team. I don't think he's going to, but I think he should. What do you think about the whole Bradbury thing at this point? I know we're at the point now where it's like, Howie's just going to keep him, but why? What's the thinking at this point now? I
Well,
mean,
what James Bradbury was a freaking second team All Pro in 2022.
well, I get
I
that. But
mean,
he
I
wasn't.
mean, I mean, this guy's been a good player for a really long time, and the
he
question,
wasn't an
what have
all-pro at safety, John. I'll tell you that.
what? Well, yeah, well, that's a conversation of, but I mean, what that started? What has James Bradbury done? What the hell has Tristan McCullum done? Are you kidding me? Now, if you're just talking about who's a better football player, if James Bradbury's got a breath in his body, he's a better football player. But again, this is where you have to evaluate the reps. Like Tristan's playing with third team, sometimes fourth team players. James has been a long time starter in this league, ran it at cornerback, and now they're trying to transition him to safety, which I will admit is kind of crazy from my standpoint. And then the contract. I mean, that's why the contract. They signed him to a big money contract after the 22 season. Everything's guaranteed for this year. And they're not the first team to keep a guy because of his contract. I mean, but slow your roll on Tristan McCullum. Yeah, he had a good summer playing on the third team. And by the way, I think I would keep him. But I mean, yeah. I mean, we're not talking about Ronnie Lott. The fact that, again, one of my concerns and one of my original concerns was about moving James Bradbury to safety was you're taking away reps from not only Tristan McCullum, but at the time, Mekhi Gardner, who got hurt and is now gone. The young safeties that, in theory, you would want to develop. They also have Sidney Brown coming back. They also have Caden Stearns, and that's another guy we don't talk about. Where does he fit in? Those guys are Sidney way ahead of Tristan McCullum. So I think everybody's acts like Sidney Brown isn't coming back. He's going to be back. And
you think it's more valuable than to have Bradbury at that back, even with Sidney Brown, returning, than it would be to have McCullum?
Well, the only issue is special teams. And again, nobody seems to care about special teams, which I asked about Brooks. Bradbury doesn't play special teams. But if you need somebody to play against Green Bay, yes, James Bradbury would be much more prepared to play against Green Bay on defense than Tristan McCullum. So it depends how you kind of look at it. If you want the special teams help, yeah, Tristan McCullum would be much, James doesn't even play special teams. But I mean, I would have kept Tristan McCullum, and I would keep, and they haven't cut him yet, so maybe they will keep him. I would keep him. But the Eagles, they're not, I mean, this is, they took away second team reps from him and Mekhi, which was a red flag to me, and saying, oh, they don't care that much about their development. So we'll see how it shakes out, but I wouldn't get too overly upset by that either way, because Sidney Brown's coming, and who knows where Caden Stearns is, and those are higher profile prospects than Tristan McCullum.
Some ruthless people in the chat, Johnny Max. Saquad says Caden Stern got to stop limping on his bum knee before he gets mentioned. So,
oh, he's got to be healthy. Yeah. I mean, but the assumption that young kids aren't going to get healthy is kind of a bad assumption. I mean, like Sidney Brown, everybody acts like he's dead. Same thing with Cooper DeJean. It was out for 20 days. Everybody was like, well, that's done. No, it's not done. He's going to be fine. He's going to be back. Just like Cooper's fine and he's back. I mean, I'm sorry if that affects people. That Sidney Brown's the long-term plan,
right,
at safety.
I thought he flashed last year in his rookie year. I thought he had some good games last year, late in the year.
Oh yeah, he did. Sidney's tremendously athletic. I mean, his deal is he played 1,000,000 miles an hour, and would often get out of position. So he's got to kind of settle down and, let the game come to him a little bit more.
He
But
was
he's
what,
got
an early third rounder? Is that what he was?
Sydney. Yeah. Third
Yeah,
round.
early third, I think it was. Yeah.
Tyler Steen was 65, and I think Sydney was 66. I think they had back-to-back.
Oh, that's right. They had those back-to-back picks, and they took both of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me look up Sydney. Yeah, Sydney was 66. I don't have the full draft in front of me, but I do think Steen went right in front of him.
Yeah,
Let's hit
he
the
was
super chat.
65. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was 65, and Sydney was 66.
Yeah, so
which is-
both early third rounders. Steen is looking a little bit disappointing at this point, but we'll see what he can turn
Well,
into.
it's injury related again.
Yeah, but when he's
hopefully.
out there, he hasn't looked great, right?
Well, he was out there for 2 practices, and then he was out there for his third.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans also point to that game last year in Dallas when
Well, he did a bad job in pass protection.
yeah.
But he started 1 game against a really good pass rush. And yeah, they pulled the plug and went right back to Sua Opeta. I don't know if they made the right decision there, to be honest.
Let's hit the super chat here from James Carver. James, thank you for the support, man. We're doing a little Q&A right now, talking to some of the people in the chat about what they have to talk about. I will ask John in a second about Cooper DeJean. James Carver says, if you cut Bradbury, his $7 million hit next year is equal to, as Nick Waters pointed out, that would have eliminated the money that's equal to the Barkley and Huff signing next year being eliminated should such moves come avail if cut. James, you're talking in tongues there from me. John, do you understand what James is asking here?
Yeah, I mean, well, number one, you can do whatever you want to do. I think Jerry proves that. Howie proves that every day. So all the talk about, oh, you got to keep somebody. No, you don't. All the talk about Saquon Barkley's big contract, it's meaningless, even if he completely flops. It's meaningless. It's not going to affect them. Even Carson Wentz, I remember having that discussion with Andrew Brandt. We were like, there's no way the Eagles are going to take on that dead cap hit. Well, they did because, partially because Carson wanted out, partially because they didn't mind. And, did they have to take a slight step back? Yes. And then they're right back in the mode. So a lot of it is, yes, lip service, and they can do what they want. And if they want to cut James Bradbury, they can cut James Bradbury. It's not going to affect them dramatically, any essence. But again, for most GMs, they're very cognizant of how their decisions, and need to be very cognizant of how their decisions are viewed by all the people saying this. And it might be fans, it might be media, it might be both, a combination of both. But the bottom line is this is a very public-facing industry. And the bottom line is if the narrative starts that so-and-so general manager did this and this is a disastrous contract, that has an impact on their job, literal job, and whether they're going to have it. That's the part where I think Howie doesn't take advantage of as much as he can. Because Howie doesn't have to worry about that shit like everybody else. Bottom line, he doesn't.
Right.
Now, he hates it when you bring that up. And I'm not saying he's got complete carte blanche, but he's got a way longer rope than anybody else.
He's got as close to carte blanche as you can get, John, for an NFL GM.
Well, and I'm not going to go that far because he's already been removed once. So he's already been through it. And Howie,
I don't have a problem with it, by the way. I think Howie has earned it in the last 4 years. I think Howie's been the best GM in the league, especially over the last 4-year period.
He's certainly in the conversation.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why is because he can afford to make mistakes that other guys can't make. But he's like everybody else, and the Anais Smith thing proves it. That doesn't impact him either. If he cuts James Bradbury, it's not going to impact him at all. But he doesn't want to. Why doesn't he want to? Ego. Yeah, he wants to get something for him.
Yeah, right.
He doesn't want to just give him up. They're human beings. And, the minute he cuts James Bradbury, people will forget about it. I'm not saying they're not going to forget about it, but if he does cut him, you're going to hear that. What a disastrous contract. No, it wasn't, but that's what you're going to hear. And they're all cognizant of that, and they have to be. Most GMs have to be. I was just talking to Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah when the Vikings were in. I mean, his first draft was Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth, his first 2 picks. And you talk about disaster. I mean, he just gave up on Andrew Booth. He traded him to Dallas. I'm surprised he got anything for him. He got one of Dallas's disappointing corners. It was a player-for-player trade. And now he's got his first-round pick who's played, I believe, 10 snaps in his first 2 years, playing every single preseason snap against the Eagles because they can't keep him. And they don't want to keep him, and they want to get something for him, whether it's a 6th or a 7th round pick. I mean, he's already on the clock because of his first draft going so poorly. That's why these guys are so hyper focused on spinning everything as positively as possible.
Yeah, no doubt. And I try not to be a total Howie truther, but I do get annoyed at people like Jeremy says he's not good at drafting, and I'm just like Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, Milton Williams, Kenny Gainwell. That was all in 21. Jordan Davis, whatever. We'll leave him out because not everybody's sold on him. Cam Jurgens, another draft pick. Jalen Carter, Sidney Brown, Keely Ringo. Like Howie Roseman is hitting fine in the NFL draft, especially in the last couple of years. Every GM has misses. That's part of drafting. So I would disagree that he's not good at drafting, Jeremy. I think Howie has gotten, there was a time when he struggled with it, but I think he's gotten a lot better in recent years, especially since that 2020 draft, which, by the way, gave us Jalen Hurts in the second round. So you can't let go of that one. But
and there's a whole plot. Like if you're an NFL personnel person, the guy I used for this recently in Philadelphia is Quez Watkins. I mean, that is an unmitigated success from any NFL personnel person's perspective. That was a 6th round pick who made it through his entire rookie contract with the Eagles and got a second contract with Pittsburgh. That is an unmitigated success from the NFL standpoint. You tell that to an Eagles fan, they look at you like you're got 3 heads.
Right.
Because any day 3 pick, if they turn into something,
right,
it's a home run.
Yeah. Plenty of people are pointing out Jeremy checks in. I disagree. I can name just as many. Yeah, Jeremy, I mean, look, in his past, he did have some, but every GM has bad picks.
Every GM. Pick out the GM. Go look at any GM you like. Go look at his history, if he's been around for more than a year or 2. I just brought up a young one who was a disaster in year 1, and he's already, I'm not going to say he's on the hot seat because they drafted a quarterback and he'll probably get the opportunity to see that out, but it ain't good. The early results, and he's already starting to hear it. Every GM.
And like I said, I think he's gotten a lot better. He has his share of picks. Tony checks in. I'm sorry, I can't let you gloss over Rager. I mean, Tony, are you breaking news? Are you breaking news here, man? That the Jalen Rager pick sucked? I mean, come on, we know that. He's bounced back. He got Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. I get it. He had to correct a mistake, but every GM has them, and I just think how
the thing. If you draft Justin Jefferson, again, everything's in a vacuum. Justin Jefferson went to a team with a very, very high volume thrower.
Yeah,
that's how I describe it.
True.
4,000 yards a
how
year.
Good he does without him, by the way.
Yeah, to assume he was going to do the same thing here at that time is insanity. It's not a vacuum. Now, he's going to be a very good player because he's a very good player. But to assume it's the same in the same it nuts. And then the domino effect, and this is where GMs prove their worth because everybody's going to make mistakes. Andre Dillard as well. Well, Andre Dillard doesn't matter because they found Jordan Mailata later in the draft and developed Jordan Mailata. Jalen Reagor doesn't matter because they corrected it by getting Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. Guess what? If they don't have if they have Justin Jefferson, they ain't drafting Devontae Smith. You got a whole butterfly effect going on. Now, maybe they draft somebody else on the defensive side somewhere else that's even better. I doubt it, but you never know what's going to happen. So what being a GM is about contingencies, and, you know, if you do make a mistake, because everybody's going to make mistakes, how do you recover from that mistake? Those are the good GMs. And anybody who debates Howie being one of the best NFL general managers freaking doesn't know anything about the modern NFL.
Yeah, and a lot of people are bringing up some of the old picks. Yeah, I get it. Look, I think he's improved a lot. John, we got one more super chat I want to get to. And Martine, what's up, brother? Thank you for being here, and thank you for supporting the show and dropping a super chat. We'll read that now. Dead cap money, special teams issues aside, like you said, John, Bradbury with limited athleticism, he's been a good corner for years. Bunch of young corners on this team can learn from Bradbury. And Martine sides with you on that. Johnny Mac, what's your response to that take on James Bradbury?
Yeah, well, he's good he's definitely good for the young corners. And he's definitely good for any of the young defensive backs. Same thing with Slay from that perspective. But yeah, he's played at a high level for a very long time. I thought, you know, he'd be a perfect fit at corner for Big's scheme. And Big said early when we talked to him, you know, he's going to play some corner at some point. And maybe we'll get to that point and maybe they'll need him. You know, and evidently James is the one who saw the writing on the wall and said, well, let me try safety because of how many corners they brought in. So part of it was player driven, to try to make the most and get through this year. And, I think that's the way it's going to go. I think, Brooks agrees with me. I think they're going to keep him. It wouldn't, you know, bowl me over if they moved on, but it would be a bit of a surprise. And boy, I mean, when people say, I mean, you gotta give him some credit for 2022, don't you? If you're not, I mean, I'm not an Eagles fan. I mean, how do you just move on from a guy who did that for your team, who had that year from your team, for your team?
Well, I do think, I mean, look, John, you're one of the best there is at adding context and not talking about things in a vacuum. I thought James Bradbury was tremendous in 22. Everybody did because he was an all-pro. But, you know, I think it's a what have you done for me lately league. I think people look at that pass rush that had 70 sacks. How much did that help James? I think there's a lot of factors that go into that people are. He's hit the age now where he's on the decline and they want
to. Well, I'm not talking about people talking about context, all of that. That's fine. I'm talking about the ones who say he's trash. I'm like, come on. I mean, that's that's the part where I can't get on board with that. You can criticize the guy all you want. Constructive criticism. He's never, even early in his career, his game was never predicated on athleticism. He always has been a smart, savvy player, more of a zone corner than a press corner. Very smart, very good ball skills. But yeah, I mean, I'm just talking about the people that call him trash and
we got a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's me. The same thing with Avante, who's one of the toughest guys on the team. And Avante's made of glass because he gets hurt. Yeah, well, you go at 185 pounds, you go take on 270-pound guys and put your head in the middle of a run fit of an NFL play and see if you're made of glass. Guy's one of the toughest guys on the team. That kind of stuff is what bothers me. But it's not going to stop. I realize it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think Bradbury, I mean, look, he was good, but I do think his time is done in Philly. And I think Howie's overextended his hand here on the move with Bradbury. But we'll see what they end up doing. Brooks had him making the team. I think you have him making the team. So
yeah. As long as he's here, I got to make. I mean, again,
I don't think they're going to cut him.
He took it this far. Is he really going to cut him today?
No, I don't think so, John. I don't. Not for a guy like Tristan McCullum. I don't see it.
Yeah, and Sidney's coming back, and the person with Caden Stearns, yeah, again making fun of the injury, which I don't like. But yeah, that's a complete unknown. Other than, Vic likes him. Vic drafted him in Denver, and he likes him as a player. So if the Eagles can get him here back on the practice squad, he's a higher level prospect. And the defensive coordinator likes them. So they got options at safety.
No doubt about it. John, let's hit our last commercial break. We have about 21 minutes left to go on the show today. We've had a great crowd in here, over 600 watching, Johnny Mac. I appreciate all you guys for being here, for enjoying the show. Make sure you guys hit that like button. If you do like the show, we'll be back in 3 minutes, and we'll wrap up this Cut Down Tuesday edition of Birds 365. Back in 3.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your greenhouse? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365. It is Cut Down Day, marking another milestone, John, in the offseason. We're just 10 days away from the Philadelphia Eagles kicking off in Sao Paulo, Brazil, versus the Green Bay Packers. It's coming quick, everybody. get ready. We're all ready for the season. Big crowd here in the chat today. Appreciate everybody being here. Johnny Mac, just 17 minutes left to go here on the show today for cut down day. I think we're going to try, and Screwface is asking if we're going to do a show later. We are going to try and do a Birds football 24/7 tonight. I'll talk with John about that after the show and see if we're able to do it. But we'll try and do that for you guys tonight, Screwface, after the cuts come out at 4 o'clock. So we'll get the roster. We'll have John. John will write his reports and everything, and hopefully we'll get live around 6 o'clock for that. But I will confirm that later on. Johnny Mac, where are we on this roster, man? We're 17 minutes left in the show. What are we, 6 hours away from the final cuts? What is Howie going to do here? Any trades, anything happening today, John, that would be out of the ordinary for Howie?
Nothing's out of the ordinary for Howie. So
It's
no,
true.
I would say, yeah, I mean, he's going to do something unique. Whether it's, again, going light at tight end because he's going to add from outside the organization. As far as trades, Dotson's probably the biggest one, which he's already accomplished. But, yeah, I mean, if he can get something for Eli Ricks or somebody of that nature, get some extra draft capital if he doesn't want to go in that direction, there's always a possibility. We already saw with Anaya Smith going on short-term IR, most likely, not official, but most likely. They're probably going to keep Sidney Brown on PUP, so he'll be out for the first 4 games, would be my guess. So that's something to keep an eye on. If he's not kept on PUP, that means he's really close. And then he's on the roster, but I think they'll err on the side of caution there. And think about the next 5 years, not the next 5 weeks, would be my guess. So there's always, and there's already been, and now with the rules the way they are, Howie's got a lot more avenues to go down, which makes it tougher to predict, but probably a lot more fun for him.
Yeah, no doubt. We'll see what they end up doing today. I think I'm sensing that the Howie is a trick up his sleeve today. Maybe it's a trade. Maybe, I don't know, something. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll discuss it either tonight or tomorrow on Birds 365. But that's my sense. John, I want to ask you about a guy.
I have a lot of holes. I think you got the big trade.
Yeah, I do too. I just wonder if maybe he tried to bolster up something on that defense. But as you've pointed out, it makes it tough because they have the depth. You really would need a splash player, and I don't know if Howie's making a move for a splash player.
They're not getting a splash player. No,
yeah,
no. It would be a lower level player. And they're, I think more offensively is the depth issues than defensively, which is weird. But hey, I think they added a ton of corners. They got too many corners. I've talked about linebacker a lot. They're very deep on the defensive fronts. Yeah, I don't see many issues from a depth standpoint on the defensive side.
I want to ask you about John about Cooper DeJean, but this is a good question here to educate our listeners a little bit, John. Today's a tough day in the NFL, and we just view it as like who's going to be on our football team, but it's true. A lot of guys get cut today. A lot of guys lose a dream that they've had for their whole lives, and some of them never get it back. Some of them do, which is a good thing. But Kevin says, here's a question. Guys that get cut, do they get any money or are they left high and dry? How does it work, John, for guys that get cut today and don't get put on a practice squad and they're left out there?
It depends on their contract. What's their contract status? Yeah, I mean, if they signed a 1-year deal and they got no guaranteed money, they're out of luck. If you're a rookie getting cut on your contract, you got your signing bonus, and then you have the next 4 years mapped out. So it depends on your contract and where you are, but yeah, it's not a good day when you get cut in the NFL, and it's not a good day for anybody. But the positive note is that they keep adding more jobs. The practice squad is up to 16 now, and it used to be 10. Go back even farther, it was even lower than that. So a lot of the guys that get cut today will be brought back on the practice squad, and they'll be making less money, but they'll still be making a good living. And then you have the UFL, spring football. So guys who want to keep the dream alive that aren't brought back have that avenue. But yeah, difficult day. And, but as we talked about with the injuries and certain players being trash, most fans don't think too much about it, but it is a difficult day.
Kevin, thanks for the question, man. We appreciate that. John, a guy I want to ask you about who we didn't really have a chance to follow up on in our show yesterday is Cooper DeJean. I got ripped in our comments for saying I wasn't too happy with Cooper, or I just wasn't impressed by Cooper DeJean. People were calling me Silio 2.0. They were ripping me. I'm like, come on, man. I have this team winning 13 games. People were ripping me, John. Did you have a chance to go back and watch, what he did? And do you have any other takeaways on what you saw from him?
I did. In fact, Sean Syed from Syed Schemes, and I think that's the way you pronounce it. He was the one, because I remember talking to you after the show. I'm like, well, I was pretty impressed with him at the line of scrimmage. And sure enough, he played, Big was doing the run blitzes from the slot, and he was making some serious plays. So, and Sean, and I'll retweet it for everybody again if they want to go look at it. He put up a couple plays where Cooper really made an impact in the run fits. Now, and nobody cares about that. 3 different examples where he made plays. So that stood out to me just watching the game live. He did struggle in coverage a little bit, and he had the penalty. So, but yeah, when you said after the game that you weren't impressed at all, I thought that was unfair. But I get it. He wasn't great in coverage, but he was great in those run fits, and that's what Vic's looking for. So he's going to be on the field sooner.
Is that what he's looking for more than coverage, though? He's a corner.
Oh yeah, nickel, big time. In fact, it's almost like an extra linebacker. He said it in one of his press conferences.
Right. Yeah. So from that perspective, with where DeJean would be this year or in the immediate future, I guess that is a good thing. I did see though, John. I don't know if it was PFF or what, but I think he was the lowest graded Eagle defender.
Yeah, and that was coverage related. Yeah, he wasn't great in coverage, and also the penalty. You get knocked down for penalties pretty severely.
Yeah. Well, at least it's good to know I wasn't totally bad shit.
Especially when you, his penalty happened to be on the play where the Eagles would have had an interception. So it took a turnover off the board as well. But you're right. He didn't have a great grade. They didn't grade him well. But it was all because of coverage. His run defense, he was the second best player on the defense.
No, that's good.
Behind Gabe Hall. So there was some positives in it. And those run fits in the nickel in the slot position are a big deal. And he made some, and everybody, I just reposted the clips of him in run support. And if you can watch him, and it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to watch them once we get off the show here today. Just 8 minutes left to go. I want to thank everybody for being here today. We've had a great crowd here on Cut Down Day, so thank you guys for making the show grow. Like it's been a lot of fun hosting this show with John and McMullen and talking to you guys every day. So thanks everybody for being here. John, what's your final thoughts here as we wrap up this 8 minutes to go here on the show on Cut Down Day? What's your final thoughts?
Necessary evil. You got to get down to 53, and then you'll get the practice squad. Get that going by noon on Wednesday. And as we said, difficult day for a lot of players, but a happy day for some. always be a bit of a surprise. I remember Mario Goodrich. That was such a big deal that he made the 53 last year. I don't know. This is a pretty good team. I don't know how many undrafted players are going to make it, or even it's been how we talked about those reserve future signings. Most of those guys are going to get cut as well. Pretty good team, and we'll get to see it, and we'll get to visualize it tonight.
John, back when the schedule released, we did the schedule thing, and I think I had 13 wins. Right? I had 13.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, I was 13-4, and I've stuck to that number. I think you were 10, and if you had to go up or
no,
down,
I was at 11, and then if I had to go up or down, I'm going backwards.
Okay, I thought you were 10. Okay, so you think where you were is right on the money after seeing all of training camp and everything you've seen so far?
Yeah, I because I think there's going to be some hiccups defensively. I think there's
going to be hiccups early in the year.
Yeah, I think they're going to get progressively better defensively. They're going to be a lot better in the second half than the first half. And offensively, I think there's going to be some growing pains with the new offense. And I'm interested to see how you feed all the mouths and how Kellen handles it. But the ceiling is pretty high. I will say that. If they're good, they're good. And if they come out of the first 4 weeks 4-0, or then you're talking about a special season, because I think they're going to get better.
Yeah, and I think the schedule at the back end opens up for them. I think it's a little easier once you get to those last 5-6 games. So if they can win, if they can come into that stretch with a good record, they're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah, I mean, they have a chance. That there's no doubt about it. But when you talk about all these moves on paper and you look at it generally all of them don't work out. Some of them do, some of them don't, and that's the beauty of football. That's why they play the games. There's upsets every week. I look back to 2022. That was a special season. Came up just short. That's the ceiling. They could be that type of team again. But is that likely? If you're a betting man, special for a reason. Doesn't happen a lot.
Doesn't happen a lot at all. If you guys want to drop your win predictions in the chat, I will take some of them. Eagle Mike's with me. He's got 13-4. Flexing and Steppin says 7-9 wins this year. That would be
7-9.
That would be trouble. Flexing and Steppin. Eduardo says 12-5. Our man Mad Bird says 12-5. Dave says 9-8. So not everybody's overly optimistic this year, but appreciate all you guys being in the chat. John, I'm going to ask one more player I want to ask about today, and that's Nolan Smith. He's a guy that's dominated our comment section recently, even after the shows when I just read through the comments on some of the videos and the comments after we're done being live. People are not happy with Nolan Smith. People are losing faith in him very quickly. Where are you on Nolan Smith? He did play that third preseason game, John, and not many others did.
It's funny because Nolan Smith, we're talking about Tristan. Tristan played the whole game, and everybody's like, Tristan McMullen. And Nolan's got to play 19 snaps
in the whole game. Tristan McMullen was in the first round draft pick.
Well, I know, and that's what I'm getting to, the expectations part of it. No, I'm not giving up on him. No, it's very early in his career. He wasn't healthy last year, but he played and he persevered through it. He didn't miss any games, so that's a check mark in his column to play through a shoulder issue like he had. Hopefully he's healthier. He's gotten bigger, but that doesn't mean he's going to be Hassan Reddick in year or two right away. All he needs to do is be a meaningful piece of the rotation, and I think he will be.
Will he, though?
Yeah, I think he will be. I talk about the depth. One of the reasons he's part of it. They have 5 edge rushers they can play.
I think Patrick Johnson looked better than him in the preseason games.
Well, Patrick's included in my 5. Yeah, Alex Hunt is included.
Well, that's why I'm saying, is he going to be a meaningful part of the rotation? Because I think Patrick Johnson's going to have a chance to get on the field because no one's not living up to it.
I doubt it, but maybe. And as long as somebody lives up to it, who cares? But
Well, John, I appreciate the point. People will care.
oh, they will care. I know they
I
will.
can assure you of that. If the first
Howie will never hear the end of it. It'll be another
first round edge
Jalen
rusher
Reagor.
doesn't do shit this year. People will not. People will care.
Yeah, they're going to care because he's first rounder. You know, it's interesting. If he was the 30th pick, if he was the 33rd, people wouldn't be as focused on it, which tells you the kind of goofiness of the first round pedigree thing. But yeah, I mean, he's got to play better. I think he will play better. But I get why people are concerned. I don't get why people are jumping off bridges. I think you have a I think there's
I'm not jumping off
in the
the bridge,
middle.
but I think if he doesn't do something this year, he's got 18 months left as a Philadelphia Eagle.
Yeah, I'm not ready to go that far.
Which would be next season too, but I mean,
he would have to completely flop this year, and I don't think he's going to completely flop this year. I've seen little signs. Like I said, when Lane is not in practice, all of a sudden you see a lot more Nolan Smith, and there's a lot more flashes. And I think, again, you're not playing against Lane Johnson every week, so. There's some average tackles. There's some below average tackles. Maybe those are the guys he's taking advantage of, but I think he's got the ability to do that. And look, he's got to play. You got to make sure that Bryce Hupp and Josh Sweat aren't up at 800 reps like they were last year. In the case of Reddick, it's well over 900. When you include the playoffs, you got to get those numbers down. So he's got to play more. Brandon might have to play a little bit more. Patrick might have to play more. And throw Jalix Hunt in there if you want. Who knows? Maybe
I got a bold prediction. I think Brandon Graham this year has more sacks than Nolan Smith.
Well, I think Brandon's going to play more than people realize. I've said it for months now because this is it. And
I think he's also going to be more productive than people realize.
Well, he's always productive.
Yeah.
That's another. Brandon's. I assume at some point, if he continued to play, he would no longer be productive. But man, he's productive, and he was still really productive in the snaps last year, and I expect him to be this year as well. Yeah, I mean, I bet rich people problems, like I said. Yeah, all right. You're a little bit concerned about Nolan Smith because he had to play in the third preseason game. I'd rather have that concern than, I have no pass rushers whatsoever, which there's teams in the NFL. Atlanta's been looking for a pass rusher for 5 years. They finally had to trade for Matt Judon. You're worried about the fourth pass rusher, which is, nice problem to have, as they say.
I'll agree with you on that. It's definitely a rich person problem. One more super chat, John, before we get out of here. James Carver, thank you, man. Another $10. We appreciate the super chat and the support today. Everybody's been great in our chat today. 163 likes on the show. So thanks everybody who dropped a like. And if you enjoyed the content, we would appreciate one of your likes if you haven't already on the way out the door. So thank you for that. James says, this is just a huge thank you to you all for a great offseason and a summer of coverage. Just wanted to share a thank you from all of us because I know I'm not the only one feeling that way about both of you too. James, thank you, man. We appreciate you. You've been a big part of our summer, and we appreciate your contributions to the show, some of your amazing comments, some of your great takes, and your financial support as well. You've been probably our biggest super chatter, James Carver. And I'll tell everybody else, we have a bigger crowd right now, so maybe the folks didn't hear this. JAKIB is trying, John, to send James Carver to a game. I don't think James is in the area. James lives down in Texas. I'm trying to send him to the Eagles-Dallas game in Jerry's world. On JAKIB, fully paid for, parking paid for, everything handled. And we want to send James because he's been a big contributor to the show and a big supporter. So thank you, James. If you want to take me up on the offer, everybody here on the air just heard it. So the offer is theirs for you. So if you want to take it, James, let me know, man. I will make it happen for you. So appreciate you. Appreciate that super chat. Johnny Mac, good show today, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate doing it. And hopefully we talk to you later on today on Football 24/7 after the National Football Show.
Yeah, we'll see. Howie's going to talk at probably 4:30-ish.
Oh, Howie is speaking today.
Yeah.
Oh, great. So we'll have some good stuff to talk about.
So it'll be later, obviously. So we'll see, depending on what he's doing and what is going on. But yeah, cut down day. Peyton Hendershot, tight end from Dallas, is going to be waived.
Couple tight ends coming up. Yeah, maybe Eagles make a move on one.
Yeah. So, yeah, a couple tight ends. A lot of stuff going to be going on today.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. Good show today, man. We'll talk to you later on tonight after Howie, and then again on Birds 365 in the morning. Good show, Johnny Mac.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody in the chat. Hit that like button on your way out, and we will catch you tomorrow morning on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.